Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Megan. I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight. Today, we are going to be painting a really fun and curious, like Hobbit scene. It's going to be mountains with a river with just some beautiful green fields and a beautiful sun. We're going to keep a very vector, kind of simple color approach, solid color approach for today. We're not going to do a ton of like depth techniques. We'll do some, but not a ton. But this is really just about character building today. Think of like a story scene. So we'll have some fun with it. We're also going to be playing with a certain palette of colors. So I want to talk a little bit about the colors as we get started. So I'll be using my color wheel here just to show you visually about color choices that I want you to make today as an artist, but also that you can have a choice of what you want to use and why. Okay. So, so glad you're here. Let's talk a little bit about supplies as we're getting started. I am using acrylic craft paints today. The colors that I'm going to be using are really like yellows, oranges, and greens. So colors I'll need are blue and yellow because that will make green. And then red will help me mix an orange tone with the yellow. So red and yellow and blue will give me my oranges and my greens here. And I'll use white as well. I may grab a little bit of black to darken the shade or in the tone of the color. So black and white, blue, red, and yellow. And if you happen to have green or multiple colors of green, kind of handy, you're welcome to grab those. So those are the colors I'm using. I do have an array of acrylic brushes, nothing fancy here. If you have fancy brushes, perfect. If not, no worries. But I kind of have a large brush for some coverage areas. This is a 1/2 inch flat tip brush. If you wanted to use a larger brush like this, you could, it doesn't matter. The smaller brushes sometimes give me a little bit more control with some detail work, but we'll go from there. I also have a pencil. I am going to be doing some sketching up front to determine the placement and the composition of the objects. So some of the objects we'll be putting in are some rolling hills. We'll be putting in a hobbit house. We'll be putting in some mountains and a sun in the sky. So those are some of the things that you can use a pencil for as we get going. In addition, I have a paper towel for any messes. I am painting on an 11 by 14 canvas paper today, acrylic paper, which is terrific. And I have a side plate. You can use a side plate to mix colors on. I have a palette paper that I'm using right here. So this looks like a sheet of paper. It's palette, it's like a wax paper. And you can always go get a piece of wax paper if you wanted to as well. So that's always handy. And the final thing I have is a cup of water. Now there's one additional bonus item that we'll use to get things started. At any point during this recording, you need to pause to go get supplies. Feel free to do that. So feel free to pause the video and come back. But you will also need a bowl or something to trace. So if you wanted to do a scene today where you don't want like a circular object to put your scene within, you could just paint on your whole canvas. You could also, as another option, use painter's tape to kind of tape off the edges or to do a funky design. That's totally fine too. Sometimes in classes, we use like round objects to kind of be playful with painting inside. Sometimes we do rectangles to paint within. You could totally do a rectangle if you wanted to paint within. But today I'm going to use a bowl. So again, feel free to pause the video if you need to go get water, a pencil, a paper towel, a plate, all those things. And you can join us back in a minute. But once you have those items with you, I want you to center, if you're doing a square or if you're doing a rounded object, you can tape it off at this time. I'm centering my bowl so that on the left and the right, it's even visually. And on the top and the bottom, it's pretty close. There's a little bit more room on the bottom, but it's not a big deal. And I'm going to use my pencil to do a line all the way around. And this is just going to help me stay within the lines. I'm doing a soft guided line. Soft is key. And you can see that line right here. Okay, then you can put your bowl back. And then you're going to use your pencil and we're going to start to imagine and to dream our scene. So for me, I know that there is going to be mountains here in the distance. I know there's going to be rolling hills, right? So I might as well start with some of the rolling hills across the middle. So you could draw a straight line across, which is pretty boring. You could do a rolling hill. Maybe that kind of crevices down to the middle and then kind of rolls back up to the right. And this is light in color, so apologies. We are going to put a little Hobbit house over here on the right. But if you wanted to kind of bring in another rolling hill, you can. But you can start to get a little imaginative here. Imagine there's a river that's coming from the back side of these mountains on the bottom of this rolling hill. And it's kind of creeping its way. Maybe use the edge. And you're kind of creeping your way and you're going to have a little bit of a peninsula here. And I'll push down a little harder, I guess, so you can see. A little bit of a peninsula. And the river is just going to start to expose itself here in the middle. So there is some wide parts. I'll push down a little harder so you can see it with my pencil, but I encourage you to go softer. To create a river, it's more narrow in the distance, and then it kind of, there's bends where it gets a little wider. See how that's a little wider? This is going to be land right here. And this is a river coming through. So this is a land mass that I've just kind of put in here. And this might be a little bit of a body of water. So this all might be water right here. I'll make my hills a little darker here. So I'm really just starting to do a little sketching, a little drawing. So this is my river coming in here. This skinny kind of winding thing. This is land. I can always kind of bring this back if I need to. So you can play with where things come in and out. You can erase your pencil along the way. You can always change this up too, but this is just basic kind of guideposts. Our Hobbit house is going to go over here. And there's a hillside here. I'll probably be putting my Hobbit house kind of right on top of it. So I'm just going to erase some of this just a little bit. But for me, I can kind of think about, well, where do I want my Hobbit house to be? I might make a line for the underside of the Hobbit house and like do like a small rectangle for the building shape. See that? Well, I'm doing kind of the bottom side. So and this just kind of gets us going. The Hobbit house is going to kind of come up and it's going to come down. And you can play with what this looks like. So there's the top of my Hobbit house. And I'm not going to go too crazy here with detail, but I'm just kind of showing you where we're going with this. The Hobbit house is going to have kind of a rounded roof. It will have a path to the river. I can bring it down a little bit. And bring the Hobbit house down. You can have a round door. You can really, you don't have to sketch all of this out. I'm just kind of showing you where we're going. A little window. And then the Hobbit house kind of has like a little bit of a roof on top. You don't have to draw all of this right now. I'm just showing you kind of the visual of the picture of where we're going. But if you wanted to put in a rectangle, you could. we're going to paint a lot of the green grass and stuff down here. So it's optional if you want to sketch in a little Hobbit house, you can paint around it, or you can just wait. But for me, I'm just giving you a little bit of a visual so you can start to imagine your scene. All right. So I have the bottom half of my scene is my land, right? This is land. This is the river that's coming through. So the river for me will be like a light blue color and the land will be green. Then we have mountains that you can draw optionally. And we want the eye to kind of always come to the center. So our mountain angles are going to be kind of pointing downward. So there are like two or three sets of mountains in this picture. I want you to draw your highest range of mountains first. Now these can be rolling hills in the background. You don't need, the Rockies. But in the picture, in the inspiration, the Rockies are in the scene. I want you to only do mountains on half of this space because I want there to be, and even less than half is ideal for mountains because we want there to be a lot of room for the sun and the sunshine colors in the top part of this picture. So I'm going to come down and I'm just going to start to sketch Rocky Mountains. And my line is coming down here. And I'm kind of just being really kind of jagged. And if you wanted to do another layer of mountains in here, you can. Now for me, mine need to be a little higher. So I'm going to just a little bit higher. And you can start on the tall mountains or you could start in the background mountains. It's totally up to you. And it's okay to change the positioning of your mountains. For me, some of these just need to have a little more height to them. With art, and whenever you start your sketching, sometimes we sketch at the beginning of these classes, sometimes we don't. Just do whatever kind of feels right for you. I want to hold the space up here. I'll bring this a little closer so you can see it. I want to hold the space up here for the sky. So I'm not going to go too crazy because I'll come in and I'll paint my sky. But I wanted to just get a little bit of the mountains in because we'll paint our sky next. We'll do a lot of the background colors because I want to be able to change my mountains if I need to. So, and a big sun will go in here after. So I'm not totally happy with my mountains, but I'm not too worried about that yet. So I may just do one set of mountains at a time. But if you wanted to get in a base layer of mountains, you could. Otherwise, we're just going to jump in and start painting the sky together. So you can see we have like the overall composition of our picture drawn. Again, if you want to just wait on the mountains, you can. But we're going to go ahead and mix what our sky color is. And I'll talk about the colors as well with the color wheel as you're thinking about what you want to do. So the color palette for today's class are like greens, yellow. It's really yellowy oranges and orange for some of the sky. So we're looking for like contrasting colors of green. So dark greens and light greens for that pop. We're looking for light oranges and dark oranges. So you can see that these are they're fairly complementary, but based on the color spectrum, there's really a triad of colors here that make them work. It's really around greens, oranges, and purples. Like you could use purple as like a darker color if you needed to. And those three, you can see the arrows here would work well. So find a color palette that you like. If I spin this, say you want to do blues and greens, you can do bluish purples, you could do greenish blues, and you could do lighter greens, right? So pick in what you want your color palette to be. If you have questions around your color palette, you're welcome to reach out to me. I am going to do this color palette here that's in the inspiration. But if you wanted to do more blues, you could do blues. If you want to do more greens, you could do greens. Totally your choice. I'll leave this over here so you can take a look, take a peek. But I'm going to paint my sky. So we're just going to jump right in. In these classes, we typically start in the background and we work our way to the foreground. And we keep it as simple as that. So no matter your skill level, you can always just jump right in and feel comfortable and confident. So don't worry too much. If the drawing was hard, don't worry. We'll paint on top. So we're just going to jump in and start painting. So I'm going to make an orange color of choice. So to make orange, it is yellow and a tiny touch of red. So you can see over here, I grab my orange paint and I'm going to grab a tiny touch of red and I'm just going to put it below my yellow and see how I left a little bit of room in between. That will allow me to mix those colors together within that space. And you don't need to bring in a lot of red to the yellow. You only need a little bit to get the orange, especially this is like a lighter orange. So you don't need very much at all. It's kind of, not a creamsicle, but it's more of a yellowy orange. So whenever we paint, we always find the colors that we want, that we like, right? The colors, tones, and hues that we like. So always take your time mixing your paint colors because I want you to be happy with the color choice. My sky is more orangey than yellow, which is fun. We usually do blue skies. Imagine that. But this is where you can use that big brush of choice. Stay within the lines. You're going to paint your sky. Do nice smooth brush strokes. You can do soft brush strokes. I'm probably going to kind of paint on some of this mountain ridge, just in case if I want to change it. If you have pencil down, feel free to do a soft erase first. Sometimes when you use oranges and yellows, it doesn't always cover up the pencil lines. But fill in your sky. I'm not crazy about these mountains, so I might just kind of smooth the edge out and just redo them with my paintbrush. You're welcome to do that too if you want to, but stay within the lines of your circle. If you happen to go outside of your lines, you can use white paint as a touch-up at the very end, but do your best to stay within and try to maintain the same brush stroke if you can. So if you're doing horizontal brush strokes, try to maintain that horizontal brush stroke. And we're just doing a solid background color here. If you wanted to do an ombre of some kind, you could, but we're going to be using white as a little bit of detail work. But just get a base coat in. Let it dry. And then we're going to shift down and we're going to do another area. So with these classes, and we have lots of layers, we start in one spot and we'll kind of work our way around to different areas. I didn't go around my mountains because I wasn't really happy with the shapes. So I kind of painted over them, but this is roughly like, my mountains will be kind of tucked in here, and I'll use white paint to do some of these mountain peaks. So it kind of covers up some of the orange. So I'm going to do a second coat of orange. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm actually going to clean my brush and let that dry. And we're gonna come down here and we're gonna add some green for the field. So I want you to know everyone during these classes, they paint at different speeds. So you're welcome to pause this at any point for you to go at your own speed as you paint. The color for the field, when you're ready to join me, is going to be a yellowish green color. So to make a yellowish green, you grab your blue paint, and I'm going to do a tiny spot of blue just up here near my yellow, because I'm just going to bring in, I'm going to use the yellow I have, and you're going to clean your brush off well. You can kind of wipe the water off your brush. Okay, you can see there's like a little bit of orange paint, but not too much. I'm good. So you're basically going to grab just like a tiny corner of blue. See how much that is? Not very much at all. And you're just going to put it above your yellow. And you're going to bring your yellow up into the blue. And we're going for like a lighter, I don't want to say a lime green, but like a lighter green color for the field down here. Because the mountains that we're going to put in are going to be a different color green, like an emerald green. So we're going for like a lighter tone of green for, I'm going to grab a little bit more blue, a lighter tone of green. You can do like a sage green if you want. I'm going for more of like a lime tone. Try to stay out of that orange if you can. And I'm still going to use this big brush. If I need to downsize it all, I will. But I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to paint the land. I will grab a smaller brush if I need to. The land is here. The land is here, right? And our river is winding through the middle of the picture. I'll probably grab a smaller brush in a few minutes to kind of get around the corners, but join me when you're ready to paint the fields and the land here within this space. And I will grab a smaller brush. Again, I want to stay within the lines. And I'm maintaining those horizontal brush strokes. And if I need to do a vertical brush stroke to kind of get up against the edge of the circle, that's fine. Just come back in with your horizontal and make it nice and smooth. But take your time here. Typically when we paint, we start in the background and we work our way to the foreground. Just always take your time. Go at your own speed. And then we'll add more layers on top. So sometimes in our classes, our paintings will evolve over time. And today's class is such a good example of that because there's a lot of details. So we're just going to keep on moving along here. I'm going to grab a smaller brush in just a minute. I'm doing a soft hand. If you need to put a little water on your brush to kind of loosen up the pigment, you're welcome to. Then again, I'm being really smooth with my horizontal brush strokes. I'm going to switch brushes. You can see how that river is coming to life. You can see how I have the narrow parts, and in the foreground, it's a little wider because there's a bigger, the body of water is closer to us, so it's a little bit bigger. So grabbing another brush that works for you. I'm just grabbing a small, fairly small detailed brush, just to kind of paint behind the house, around the house. If you didn't put a house there, then you can just paint and just create your whole land mass, really. And then you can put your house on top of your paint. That's no big deal. But you can see I put my little house there just for guidance, dreaming, you know, showing you for placement, really. These peninsulas, if you're playing with your land here, they can be kind of straight on the bottom. Kind of helps give structure to your land. They don't have to be straight. I'll probably fix the one I just did with a little bit of lighter color. And again, anywhere you have dark pencil, be sure to give it a quick erase. And if you still can see it, don't worry. You can always just do a second coat of paint on top. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. So you will likely see brush strokes at this stage. Just let this dry. Just like the orange, we'll do a second coat. Okay, no big deal. I am going to put a little bit of white paint on my palette or on my paper plate. White is like our eraser here. So if you have something you did that you're like, I really don't like the way that looks, just let it dry 100% on your picture first, and then you can go in and fix it after. So for me, I have a little bit of green right here. I moved the paint down too far. I don't like the way it looks. So I'm just going to let it dry, and then I'll go back in and play with it. Okay. So you can decide how far up you want to bring these like rolling hills. For me, I might bring it up a little higher, but we're going to add a couple other. You can decide how many tiers of mountains and hills you want in your background, but I brought mine up a little higher over there. This is going to look great with a second coat of green on it, but I'm going to let it dry as I mentioned. And I may put those Rocky Mountains in next, but we do want to make sure we have enough orange on. So if you wanted to, if your orange was dry, we could easily go back in and do a second coat of orange right now. That's an easy thing for us to do. So we can do those mountains soon. So I might come in with my orange, just do a quick second coat of orange in my sky, because we want this to be a nice solid color. Because I'm going to put my Rocky Mountains right on top of this. And 2 coats of orange should be fine in this space. And based on the quality and the thickness of the paint you're using, you may or may not need 2 coats. I'm using a really basic craft like acrylic paint right now. So I needed 2 coats. You may want to put 3 coats. It's totally up to you. 2 coats is absolutely fine. But this looks great, much better. And it'll be ready for our Rocky Mountains in a few minutes. Again, feel free to pause the video if you need a little bit more time. And I'm going to keep us moving along. So we're doing a second coat on the orange. And then letting that dry. Okay. That's it. Easy peasy. But I hope you all are loving this so far. The colors are really different right now, but we're going to bring it all together. So don't worry. All right. So while our orange is drying, we're going to paint the water down here. The water can be a blue color. It could be a bluish green. It's totally up to you. I might just start with a light blue and then change it up a little bit. It's really a bluish green though. So I'm tempted to make like a light bluish green, kind of like a light teal. So if you want to make that with me, it's really not difficult at all. One easy way to make teal, and I feel like I make teal in all my classes, is blue and a little bit of yellow. Very easy. Just grabbing an apron really quick. It's very easy to make a teal. So it's bringing just a little bit of yellow into a blue. It just gives you a really, right? Because blue and yellow make green, and teal is more of like a bluish green, right? And then we'll have a little bit of white. So I'm just putting on an apron really quick so I don't get paint on my clothes. Not always a bad thing to do. I usually do it before class. All right. But sometimes when we know we're messy prone or drop this, drop that, you put on an apron, right? All right. So I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in this space right here. All righty. And then I'm going to use a smaller brush to kind of mix these colors together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little scoop of my yellow and I'm just gonna put it over here by my blue. And I'm gonna bring the blue down and let's just see if I can make a teal. It's so easy with these primaries. This is gonna give you a dark teal, but we want a lighter teal for our water. Now, if you don't want to use this color, you don't have to. But in these classes, I love playing with different types of colors for you to kind of stretch your comfort zone a little bit. I'm going to take a small scoop of white. I'm going to put that right in here. I'm going to make it a little lighter. And this is the color I'm going to use for the base color of the water. Now we're going to use white and like lighter accents on top, but this is going to be, we'll add white in here for sure, but this is just kind of a fun base color for the water. If you want to make it even lighter, feel free. But trust the process. Trust this is just one step of our water. So it's not going to be this dark. But imagine finding yourself sitting on the embankment here, watching the river flow by your little Hobbit house. And get a little dreamy here with your scene. If it seems dark to you, don't worry, we are going to add some water to it. Look, I can even cover up my little boo-boo there. As it goes around this bend here, it's going to be a little more narrow. See how it was wide in the back and then it's a little more narrow. That's good. It shows the 3-dimension. Right? We'll add rocks and things. We could easily spend 2 or 3 hours on today's picture, but we're just going to do some really basic things first. And then you get to decide how much more time you want to spend on it after. So if you wanted to make it a little lighter, you could. And I'm doing horizontal brush strokes to smooth things out. So use your brush strokes like how the river is flowing. Okay. Take your time, take a deep breath. Enjoy the process. It's a really fun one. There's a lot of detail in today's class, but sometimes that's fun. We don't always do a ton of detail. In these classes, I like to keep the content really different. So you can practice different things and then you can figure out what you like to paint more of and less. And you really get to learn a lot about your style, what you enjoy painting and what you don't, through painting different things, which is really fun. Or like what color palettes do I like? What do I want to spend more time on? This or that. So paint this kind of a solid color first. Oh, see, look at I stuck my hand in here and I got it all over. Typical. Very typical. It's okay. I have white paint I can use to cover that right up. See how I painted the whole river? You can see that helps the scene really come together. Use a small brush, stay within the lines. And then even using a little bit of white paint, you can really start to play around with, and using a really tiny edge, you can play with some of this water reflection. Like a gentle glide and dusting of your hand. You can do a little bit of a lighter paint on top of what you just did. See that? Just using the tip of this brush. And it can be little lines. You can put a little water on your brush. But find a brush that has a nice fine point on it. And you can do some swirling maybe. And these are all horizontal brush strokes. Little water. So this is where you can be playful. We could wait till the end to do this, but sometimes it's fun playing with it now, just so you can see it. And there's little rocks that we'll put in our stream. But you can see I'm just doing some like horizontal lines over on the right, just to add a little bit of a water effect. So you can play with that. But we have a lot more detail to add. So if you wanted to add a little bit of this water-like detail, whether it's this like light teal, or you could just use white, but find a brush that has a nice fine tip on it. Doing a little more white over here on the right side of the river. And the light is representing, this is where the sun is hitting. The edges of the river are going to be darker, and we'll put rocks in there. Should be fun. We'll tuck in little rocks. We'll do rocks maybe soon here. We'll do a second coat of our green as well. All right, so I'm not going to add too much of that, more of that white water, but you can play with it if you wish. I'll keep us moving here. You can use your finger to blend it in if you want to. You can do some smudging. We do a lot of smudging in this class. You could also have it be really like white and bold too. So I'm smudging some of this in. I'll probably come back in and add some more white again, but you can kind of see what the little bit of the lightness does to our river area. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we'll do a second coat of the green. That will be an important thing. So let's do a second coat of the green. So that is nice, full in color. And then we'll jump up and do the Rocky Mountains. So there's a ton of different steps in this picture, but it's all worth it. It's going to be a lot of fun when it all comes together. So having a little patience sometimes with our detailed artwork is important. So I'm going to do blue, a little bit of yellow. Remember, a little bit of blue goes a long way. Okay. I'm just going to have a nice solid coat of green in this field, going all the way out to the edge. And we'll add a little bit of more detail into this field. We're just doing these standard colors right now. And again, sometimes when you use these yellows and oranges, and you can see it just needs a second coat. Second coat will give it a nice smooth appearance. Again, you will likely need a smaller brush to kind of get into the nooks and crannies, so feel free to grab that when you need to. And if you wanted to make this lighter, you absolutely could. So I could just grab, if you wanted to, you could. I'm not going to go too light though. It's too light. Sometimes trying to find that original color can be tricky. It's okay, we just do our best. Okay, staying in the lines. I'm going to grab a smaller brush to kind of get in some of the smaller spots. And then we'll let it dry. We can always do touch-ups in this green space, but getting 2 coats here and again, letting it dry is like the best things that we can do. So we can kind of move on to different areas. Because we're going to add some flowers and some grass down here. It'll be lovely. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of white paint and touch up my boo-boo down here. Oh, that's drying. So I had some green that my hand smudged. A couple coats of white paint and it'll cover that right up. So don't ever worry. And going around the edge, we'll do that at the end, but you can see I can do a little cleanup right now if I need to. But letting the first coat of white dry and then coming in, you can see that green is now gone. And I have a little bit of a lip down here, so I'll clean up this lip as well. But the white cleanup on the edges we typically do at the end of class. All right. So the step we're on is getting your green grass in, the fields, and I'm letting it dry. We're gonna put more things on top of this, so don't worry if it doesn't look perfect. You won't really notice it too much. My sky is like a very juicy orange compared to the inspiration, but I'm just gonna roll with it here. If you wanted to lighten your sky, I would encourage you to do that now. Looking at mine, it's definitely darker than the picture, which is fine. I'm just gonna embrace it for what it is. But if it starts to bother me, I need to make a choice right now or not to change it. So there's points in the class where you have to kind of make decisions of, okay, am I gonna leave it the way it is? And I'm hesitant here. I might make it a little lighter. I'm gonna take a little bit of a water wash and just soften it a little bit. So instead of kind of painting orange all over it, I'm just gonna soften it with a little bit of water and a little bit of white paint. And I'm just gonna see what this does. I think it's gonna soften it to be a little more creamsicle, which is what I want. I want it to be a little lighter. So look at that, it just softened it just a bit. And for me, that works. But this was such a good example of like not being afraid to change something if it's going to make you happier. Just do it. Just do it, friends. But this is going to dry pretty quickly and we'll jump right into doing those Rocky Mountains on top of this in a minute. Okay, so that's a little bit lighter for me. We're going to make that work. Okay. So we're going to make a white or a beige-ish color. So I have, I'm going to grab a little bit of clean white right here. To make a beige, it's like yellow and orange and white kind of mixed together. You could do the mountains all white, but I'm not doing the mountains all white because I want them to stand out, but I want them to kind of blend in at the same time. And I'm going to grab a smaller brush as well. So I'm going to grab like a number 4 or a 5. See this brush? It has enough bristles on it where it can hold enough paint, but it still gives me the tip control that I need to basically paint mountains. So I have some white paint right here. I'm going to take some of my yellow and mix it in to make a light yellow first. This is going to give me a soft canary yellow. But I want it to have an orange tinge to give it. So I'm going to grab, I have a little bit of orange nearby. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that in and see if it starts to change color. Right now it's still very yellowy. I want to stay away from the green. So I'm going to come over here and grab a tiny corner of red. And a little tiny corner of red should give it a little bit of an orange tinge. And that should give me my beige, which is spot on. So find like a beige or like a light orange mountain color. Beige or light orange works. And I want you to manage how much paint is on your brush. So I don't want there to be a ton of goopy paint on your brush. See, I was spinning my brush on the side of my palette and there is not a ton of paint on this brush. I'm going to use the tip of this brush to do my ridge line. This is your Rocky Mountain ridge line, and it's going to come up and into your orange sky. Now remember before I didn't like the ridgeline I did. Just take your time here. Do the top ridge first. See, I'm starting with this top ridge. And you're going to do a second coat on top of this after, but I'm doing a ridge line. And I'm trying to do some high peaks and some low peaks so it looks natural. Now for me, I'm just going to bring this all the way down. I'm going to paint this whole space. See, I'm painting all the way down to the top of my house. That's okay. I will do one more tier of mountains. Everyone might have different space between your Hobbit house and your sky here. So you can do as many mountains as you wish here. We're doing one beige, orangish ridgeline, and then we're going to do some green. I'm going to do one tier of green in here as well, because I don't have a ton of room. Just take your time. The Rockies have like quite some steep peaks on them. I'm not a pro at painting the Rockies, because I live on the East Coast. Just I'm not around them all the time. So just do your best. It's always fun to challenge ourselves to paint different styled mountains, even though it may make us sweat a little bit. And you can always come in with a smaller brush. I'm not using like the most small detailed brush for these mountains, which is fine. I can come in and adjust the peaks a little bit if I need to. But I'm painting the base coat, and I'm painting these beige mountains all the way down to the green hillside. I don't have a ton of space here for many, many layers. So I will paint just one more tier in after, which is what I mentioned. So I'm really just doing some more drastic, just taller, more vertical peaks. Doing some high and doing some low. So just use your eye. You can decide the style of these mountains too. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. The inspiration is there just to inspire you of all the different styles you could consider. So feel free to do that. Just do what you want to do. It's going to be a nice smooth transition on this hillside here. So you can use that beige or orange paint to do that. And you can see I'm going really slow. I'm just taking my time. And these peaks are starting to come to life. I have a lot of them. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have full base coverage here of the mountain. And I'm going to come in with a smaller brush and fix some of them. That's okay. But I want to do it now because I want it to kind of all dry together, because we're going to do more detail work. All right, so I'm going to find a smaller brush. Let's see here. And I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I'm trying to kind of tie it all together a little bit. sometimes you have to play with a ridgeline and figure out what it needs to make it look more natural. Maybe there's some more like landslide areas. Maybe there's some peaks, but maybe there's some smoother areas, right? So those are the considerations as you think about. And you can see there's a bit of an angle here. Anywhere you kind of added up into the yellow, orange area, just do a second coat. We're using acrylic paint, it dries pretty quickly. So do a second coat wherever you need it to kind of cover up some of that orange in the background. So I'm kind of doing that along the way too. But we are going to add white to these peaks to add depth, and it will really help bring them to life. Really easy technique to bring these to life. And I'm not going to do a ton of blending for these peaks. I'm going to just do very like raw lines. With our tiny, tiny, tiny brush. So if you have a tiny, tiny brush, we'll do that. Once these mountains dry, we'll do some white detail work, okay? I went with like very jagged peaks. I was being very outside of my comfort zone with these, but I'm here to show you what it's like to do things that make you feel uncomfortable sometimes. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm gonna put in a white sun. If you need more time on those mountains, feel free to take it, but I'm gonna keep us moving along for time's sake, because there's lots of details. So I'm going to use a small brush of choice. This is probably this is a number 2 brush. And if anybody has ever had brushes from me, there's small numbers on the sides. And if anybody needs brushes, just let me know. I have supplies that are for sale in my classes. So if you need anything, let me know. Brushes, I have canvas panels, and I have paint also for sale. So just let me know. But I'm going to put a large sun in here, and it's going to be off-centered. And I'm just going to go for it courageously here. And it's going to be kind of half in the picture, half out. And you're just doing a big white circle right in the orange. And this is a great opportunity for your mountains to dry. I'm using pure white paint. It's going to be bright. White circle. You will likely need a second coat of paint. If you're near these mountains, just dance your paintbrush around these mountains. You can decide how big you want your sun to be. You will, again, do a second coat, so don't worry too much here. And I'm just kind of skirting my way around these mountains. Just try to do some smooth brush strokes on your sun. We will make this look more like a sun. We'll put some rings around it. If you want to put sun rays, you can. I'm going to do rings around it like the inspiration. I think it looks pretty cool. It's going to require a steady hand, but I like the way it looks. But the white can get smudgy. So once you do one coat, try not to touch it. Just get the edges of the sun in place so you have the shape that you want, roughly. Mine's not perfect, but I'm just going to let it dry. Terrific. And while that's drying, we can use a little bit of the same color that we did for these mountains, this beige color, and we can put some clouds in the sky with this color. Now the clouds in this picture are going to be, they're going to be legit lines, straight lines across. So if you wanted to grab a ruler, you could, if you have one. So let me show you what this looks like. And the sun is wet, so just be careful if you have a ruler. Maybe hold it up a little bit. So kind of find your straight. I have a little bit of a tiny brush, and I'm just going to do a couple of like straight, and you don't have to use a ruler if you don't want to. We're gonna do some clouds, some long, skinny clouds, kind of coming in and out. See these? And then you can just give it like a little 1-2 bubble on the top side of this line to make it look like a cloud. See how easy that was? Like a little 1-2, and it doesn't need to be very high. So those look like little clouds. Pretty cool. You can put a little bit of water on your brush. I want you to manage a little paint management on your brush. Don't have too much paint on it. I want you to see the tip of your brush. And you're gonna just do a couple of lines with a really light hand. Again, you could put a little water on your brush. It might help you brush smooth, glide a little more smoothly. Oh yeah, water is perfect. And kind of scatter and disperse your lines so they're a little to the left, a little to the right. Mixing a little water with this paint is a great thing to consider right on your plate. We're going to bring these clouds down more, but I want to finish the detail on the sun first. But I'm just giving you a little bit of a head start. So I'm kind of layering 2 or 3 cloud lines on top of one another to kind of create a little scene. We're going to be bringing those all the way down, but letting our white dry a little bit here. Now your mountains may be almost dry. If your mountains are almost dry, you could use a little bit of this paint. So I'm not going to come further down with any of my clouds because I want this white sun to dry, but I can take a little bit of white. And on the on the left side of each of these peaks, using a tiny brush, you can bring in a little bit of snow on the left side of each of these peaks, like this. And then you can kind of create a little bit of a landslide kind of coming down. You just do little dabs. Okay, I'm creating a little bit of a landslide kind of coming down from some of these mountains. Maybe it comes down. Whoa. And this is a little bit of the detail work. Mine is really light in color. So the white isn't standing out as much. In the inspiration, I think it was a little darker. You can also play with the peaks. With this white a little bit. If you come over to the left side, you can do it on the left or the right. It doesn't matter. Just pick one side of the mountain. You kind of come down on. For me, I'm going to go on the right side of the mountains, the ones that are on the left, because the sun is in the middle. So I'm kind of following suit. You can have the snow coming down the mountains a little bit if you want to. That's fine. This is your picture, so you can do as much or as little as you wish here. If you wanted to blend some of this in, you could with your finger, or you could just leave it as like a pure white. It doesn't matter. I wasn't going to do a ton of blending, but if you wanted to play with that, you could. But use your eye on what you want to do and where. All right, no big deal. So I'm just going to let this dry. The white might need a second coat here or there. So just do your best. If you want to blend it, you can blend it in by like smudging it around a little bit. This is a really kind of risk-free way of just experimenting of like how you want to bring in some lighter colors. Whether you're creating snow or you're creating brightness, it's just something fun to consider. I'll bring it closer a little bit. Mine's very simple. I can always use the orange to like reshape some of these too, which I'll do after. I'm not going to stress about it too much right now. But I am going to bring in a second tier of mountains. Like, so in between the green hills and these beige mountains is like a Kelly green color mountain style. If you have room to do two, you can do two. You can do a darker and then lighter, darker in the front, lighter in the back. But I only have room to do one. So I'm going to mix like a Kelly green, which is just blue and yellow mixed together. Kind of like an emerald green. And I'm just going to do a little bit of another tier of mountains here. Not like my Rocky Mountains. God help me. I'm just going to do like another rounded tier. Sort of rounded. And I'm just going to layer it in here. And I'm going to always start with that ridge line. And they're all going to kind of come down again towards the middle area. You can see that. And then I'll have them kind of go back up. Towards the left. So they're going to kind of meet in the middle. And I'm going to fill this in entirely with the green. So this is a nice contrast. This is going to match a lot of the rocks and a lot of the greens that we'll put down below. A lot of our leaves and petals for the flowers will be this color. So it'll tie everything together visually. So again, it's just having a little patience. You can add in as many mountains as you wish. You can make them big or small. You know what the spatial constraints are of your picture, like where something needs to be a little shorter, where something could be a little higher, right? But just lean back in your chair. If you need to grab a pencil to help you sketch out on top of like where these other mountains should be, feel free to grab a pencil. You can do a pencil right on top of acrylic paint and it will erase. If the paint is dry, it will erase. But you can see I'm tucking in a nice contrasting layer. If this layer is too dark for me, guess what? I can come in and make it a little lighter. It's not a big deal. For me, it's a little dark, so I'm just going to soften it in areas. Just putting like a little bit of a lighter color on top. And for me, that works well. So it's okay to kind of change things as you go. Don't freak out if you paint something you don't like. You can always fix it. Always, always. And I'm kind of painting around my Hobbit house since I decided to draw it. You may or may not have one of those yet on your picture. Put a little bit of lightness here. Is just softening, and it's also kind of pairing well with some of the contrast in the mountains already, so. La-ti-da. We'll do some nice edging on these mountains so they stand out and they look nice. So if you're painting and you're like, Megan, this is like lots of layers, it looks very boring and flat. That's where we are right now. For work to look really detailed, you have to start with all these background layers. And then you work your way to doing all those details. And that it's very common with all kind of forms of art. Very, very common. There's different styles, right? So it's just kind of acknowledging the process and just enjoying it along the way here. I want a nice clean line on this green hillside. And you can see that second tier is really bringing it together because it's darker, it's green, it's a darker green contrast. Once we're done these green mountains, we'll go back in and add a second coat to our sun if our sun is dry. I'll do a second coat for these green mountains too. One of the other things you can do with this darker green is just making a little bit more. Is you can find the edging of your river. So the back embankments, you can do a little bit of a dark green outline. So like as it comes around, you can do a little bit of shading. So see how this part kind of came around? I'm using the tip of the brush. This is the shading, the embankment, and this is the embankment here. See that? And you can use this to create a little shading. Like that for your water if you wanted to. And then this front embankment definitely needs a little shading here. We'll put in rocks and things. Put a little water on your brush to kind of help smooth it in if you wanted to. You can use your finger to smudge. I'm not going to get too fancy in this class with blending techniques, but if you wanted to play with it, you certainly could. See that shading I just added, and it just made it look totally different, right? Shading, a little water, and then over here, you can add in the shading. This front area here is going to stay nice and light, so don't add any of the shading here. Use your finger to smudge it, but you can see how that added a lot of depth to our water. Quite quickly, didn't it? Okay. So I'm going to go back up to my sun. Looks like it's almost dry. Goodness gracious. I added a lot of paint up there. I want this sun to be totally white. It has definitely orange in it. And this second coat should be much better. And I'm just painting around these mountains here. We will outline our mountains with a little bit of a different color so they stand out. Mine look like they're blending in a bit. I could easily use like an ink pen to like outline some of this. That could be really fun. You don't have to use an ink pen. Reshaping my sun just a little bit. Needs a little bit of love here. I'm sure your suns are all perfect. Showing a circle is really hard to paint, which I'm sure many of you know. We do a lot of moons and suns in these classes. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry. Right. So I want you to have some green, these green fields in, basic coats. I want you to have your water and your river in. I want you to try adding a little bit of the shading in some of these areas to create the shoreline. We'll paint our Hobbit house in a minute. I want you to consider having this back tier of mountains, which we'll fix and for me, I'll bring it to life a little bit more here. I might even darken. My mountains are a little dark. They need to be a little darker, I think. So I might do that. So I'll give everybody 5 minutes just to kind of come up to speed. Do a second coat on your sun. We'll wait to bring our clouds down after. But feel free to work on your river, on your mountains in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. And then we'll proceed to the next step. So for me, I'm going to make my mountains a little darker because they are blending in too much. They're just a little too light. So I'm just going to make a different kind of orange color. Not sure what color it is, but I'm just going to play with the tones on my palette here to just find a little bit darker of a color, just to make it stand out a little bit more. There we go. And I'm just going to make the mountain a little bit darker against the white because it's not really. There we go. So you can see I made it a little darker. I added a little bit more red to it. So it's just a little darker in color. So sometimes we kind of just have to modify and fix things along the way. Sometimes things always don't come out the way you want them to, and that's okay. But if you're learning and you're growing by doing different things, especially as an artist, and there's no risks in art, right? Most of us are doing this for fun. We're not selling this unless you are in that type of business. But we're here for the process. We're here to unwind. So it's not worth getting stressed out. It's just worth just making a change, right? So I made these a little darker, and you can see how that's helping. They're still lighter in color, but I just changed the tone just a touch. And I kept in my white snow and my highlighting in some areas, and it's standing out a little bit more now. I just added a little bit more red to kind of get that look and feel. But you can see those stand out a little bit more. They're a little more peachy now, but that's fine. Absolutely fine. And the other thing I might do is in areas against my sun, I may kind of outline the tops of the peaks with a fine brush so it stands out a little bit more. And I'll bring this a little closer so you can see what the heck I'm doing. So see on top of my sun right there, I just did a little bit of outlining. I can always come in here. I'll zoom this down for you. You can always come in and just do any detail work on the edges of your mountains just to kind of get the ridge line the way that you want it to be. This is a very rocky ridge line for me, if anybody knows me. Very rocky. My mountains do not look like this usually. But I love the fact that I am doing something a little different for you all tonight. It's good. I encourage you to try something new. It's good to be stretched. You learn and you grow from things like this. Okay, cool. My mountains need a little bit of a second coat, right? So everybody's taking these 5 minutes just to do second coats wherever you need them. This second tier of mountains here, this teal for me. This color here. So this needs a second coat really quick. It's like this greenish blue situation happening here. So I'm just going to come in and do, I want to be happy with these mountains too. And these are just solid in color. I'm not trying to do anything fancy here. If you wanted to add in any shading, you could add in a darker color or a lighter color. I'm going to keep us moving though. Just fixing some of these peaks. Again, I want to be happy with them as an artist, and I want you to do the same thing for what you're working on. And if we spend a little bit of extra time, guess what? That's okay. I want you to be happy with it. So you can see I'm making them a little more peaky. God help me here. A little more of a rocky style. I'm just using the tip of my brush. And don't hesitate to change brushes if you need to. It's one of those things where I'm reminding you as the art teacher to say, hey, are you happy with the brush you're using? Should you switch brushes, right? I'm here to remind you to consider it, because you may just use what you have in your hand when you could switch your brush to change the style of the brush stroke or change the look and the feel of the mountain. So that's something I want you to consider. I'm just doing a second coat on these so they're nice, solid in color. And then I can figure out if I want to do any additional detail work on top, but at least they're painted in solid in color, right? It's important. Many of you in these classes have not, you paint sometimes, but you don't always paint. So sometimes you'll stay with flat basic colors. That's absolutely fine. And you can stay with those flat basic colors. No big deal. Okay. So let's paint our Hobbit house. The Hobbit house is going to be, it can be like a beige color. It could be the color of those mountains back here. It could just be like a lighter, I think like a beige for a base color is going to be perfect. The roof is going to be a light green. So find a nice beige, orangey beige color that you like. Grab a small brush of your choice and just, you can paint the house itself. The door will be darker. So a beige is like oranges and yellows and whites. So we're gonna do a base light color for the house, and then we're gonna add all the contrast to the house after, okay? So there's a lot of dark areas of the house. We're just gonna start with painting in, I'm gonna go around this door. The door for me is gonna be darker. So I'm just gonna paint the base color of the house. The roof for me is gonna be a light green. I am gonna come in and erase. Actually, I don't need to erase the pencil lines because I'm gonna paint on top of them. But just paint the base color of the house. Probably gonna need 2 coats, so just, there's a little door, there's a big rounded door on the front. There's like a side door that, or a side window. You don't have to worry about those right now though. I'm painting around them since I already drew them, but if you didn't draw them yet, just paint the house and then you can paint the other objects on top of it. It's no big deal. That's usually what we do is we paint like a red barn, we do the doors after, right? We do the detail after on top. So no big deal. And then the bottom of the house is nice and flat. There's my little Hobbit house. And I'm gonna let this dry and I'll paint the roof like a nice, it could even be this color if you wanted it to, something close to this. Because we're gonna lighten it. It's kind of like a mossy green color. We'll add some lighter tones to it, but the roof can be just like a lighter green of your choice. I mean, a Hobbit house is like in the woods, right? And we will add lots of trees, like tiny little detailed trees on our picture too, which will be really fun. After, at the very end, we wanted to make sure all of our land and our mountains were in before we did all that little fun detail work. But we're giving our house a little bit of, and it's a rounded roof and it comes up. It's nice and rounded. It's not like a straight structured roof. And if it starts to blend in, don't worry, because what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of like a white outline. Look at this to the top of it. A little bit of outlining. Do some dark highlighting too, but on the top side of the roof, you can have a little bit of white. You want to find a brush where you have like a nice fine point. You just to kind of come down. And we will add in a little bit of a black outline too, but you can add a little bit of white first. The black we'll do at the very end. And again, this is a great inspiration for like a black ink pen to do outlining. I might do that. So I just did a little bit of white on the roof. You can play with how much green or how much white you want. You could even come back in with your green and just like play around with it a little bit to soften the white in areas. I'm putting like a little bit of a watery green in just to kind of like blend it in a little bit. So this is where you can be playful as an artist of like how to soften that as you wish. The Hobbit doors, there's like brown detail work. Um, we'll do the, we'll do, there's black windows and doors, and then there's brown detail work that outlines it. Let's do the brown detail work first, and then we'll kind of fill the inside with black after. Whoa, too much yellow paint. So there we go. And I'll zoom this. Actually, we're okay zoomed here for right now. So to make a brown, you can let your little house dry too. My roof may not be done. I'm just letting it dry so I can keep playing with it after. So again, I'm being mindful to stop painting. And I'm doing that intentionally because yours may not be done and you may have a really hard time stopping, but stopping is good because it lets whatever you have dry so your colors don't continue to get mucky together. So it's good to stop with acrylic every, couple minutes, especially if you are, unless you're trying to like work colors in together for blending. Otherwise, it's good just to stop and let it dry and come back to it. Okay, so to make brown, it's blue, yellow, and red all mixed together. And I'll add a little bit of white. So blue, yellow, and red makes brown. You don't need very much. And then I'm just going to bring in a tiny touch of white. And you want to use one of your smaller brushes. So I'm going for like a lighter, more orangey brown. You could even bring in a little bit more yellow and red to make it more of an orangey brown. It's totally up to you. But we're using this to outline the door. So you're going to want to use one of your smallest brushes you have. I'm going to grab a small brush. Let's see here. This is a small brush. And this is like the door frame. So you're going to do a few things here. And I have this pretty zoomed in here. I'm going to go around the window. This is where your house is really going to come to life. There's my little window. Here's my Hobbit door. We'll even use this color for like slatting on the sides of the house. Can even outline the bottom of the house and the side of the house with this. I might do like a double frame, like a double line, and then play with some detail here. So there's like some lines in between, so you can see the design work I'll do here. You can consider it if you wish. There's like these little lines in the frame, little lines. It's just me being playful. You can make this a different color brown if you like. This is not exactly like the inspiration. You can make these lines just, if they're more thick, then that's fine too. For mine, they're definitely thin, so I'm actually gonna make them a little thicker. Imagine that. I mean, wood is a big characteristic of our little Hobbit houses, right? That character. So take a few minutes to play around with the detail here. We're going to, my Hobbit door is not very round. It's okay, I'll fix it. Um, okay. You can use this brown to outline the house itself. So on the left and the right, you can do vertical lines. On the bottom of the house, you can do a straight line. We'll add some bushes down here. The doors and the windows will be black. You can outline the underside of the roof. We'll add a little black on the underside of the roof too, where some of this is, but this was just helping with contrast. Right? See where we're going here? I'm just reshaping my door a little bit here. I can use the black paint as well to kind of help make my door look a little more rounded. I'm just reshaping it a little. Okay. And then the other thing you can consider is doing horizontal and or vertical slats on the whole house. So you could do single lines. Again, we're going to paint our windows and doors black for contrast. Okay. If you wanted to put a little path in using this brown, you could kind of like maybe coming out and then going down towards the water. You could put a little path, skinny and wide, skinny, wide. And you could use some of this lighter color too to kind of fill in the path if you wish. So for me, I'm just letting the Hobbit house dry and I'm putting in a little path down to the water. We will tuck in like little dark green bushes and trees in lots of spots to make it look more of like a forest scene. So you haven't missed that yet. This is a little path. Again, we're in a little scene here. So there's a little path. And we'll add some darker greens for contrast too. But I'm just gonna, I'll grab a little bit of black. I could even use, I have a little bit of a dark brown here I could use too. So you could use black or a dark brown to fill in your doors and your windows. So this is where we're playing with the details of our Hobbit house at any pace that you wish. I had a dark brown that I mixed, so I had a little bit of extra of that. Dark brown works. And that's wet, so it looks a little shiny on camera. You can use this dark brown to kind of reshape the circular shape of a Hobbit door. Mine was like, looked like a broken orange. It was just not round. But I can use this darker color to get more of a rounded Hobbit door look. And I'll probably do a second coat of this dark color just so it really stands out. Just have fun, take your time with these details. And we'll probably use this darker brown. Add some rocks. You can do a little bit of a darker line on the underside of the house to add a little shading. Maybe across the front of the house. Maybe on the left side of the path. Again, you can always make more dark brown if you need to. I'm going to make a little bit more. It was red, yellow, and blue. Red, yellow, and blue makes brown. Blue will darken it right up. Just mix more colors patiently along the way if you need them. Again, and do a little bit of paint management. You don't want a ton of goopy paint on your brush, but doing a second coat on the door is a great idea. On your window, finding a small brush that works for you. This is really small in scale. Some of you might have bigger houses than me. Some of you might have smaller houses than me. Everybody's is going to be a little bit different at this point. I'm going to let my door dry so I can have a full second coat. If you wanted to use a little bit of this brown and do a couple of like rocks in the water, just like a couple of small rocks, kind of like a 1, 2 here. And then I'll probably do a rock over here. Rocks are kind of flat on the bottom. I have like a lot of water in the on this left side. Some of you may or may not have that. Rocks are kind of like clouds a little bit. We will add some white water reflection and some watercoloring changes around these rocks. So if they look kind of funny right now, don't worry. You can kind of soften the bottoms a little bit. You could use the tip of your brush and do some soft lines like that. Some soft lines to say it's a little rocky, maybe a little shallow in here. I don't know. Right? So there's some rocks. You can have in the inspiration, there's rocks like against the embankment too. You could consider adding rocks along the embankment. Just like little, kind of a little bit more darkness. You can always soften it if you need to. I'm definitely gonna have some rocks against the embankment over here. So this is just using a dark brown. And I might have, oh, this is like just some really soft, dark contrast, really right along the shoreline. Remember when we did the darker green for the shoreline shading? I'm just adding a few like dark rocks, like darker lines to emulate rock shapes, just so the kind of the contrast all kind of blends together. We will add some white in here too, so it stands out a little bit more, but you can see what a few of the rocks look like. But you can be working on the rocks, you could be working on your house at this time. Either is fine. You can also use this darker color to outline the roof of your house and kind of have the roof line kind of come off a little bit. A little bit of a Hobbit house. The roof line can come off. You could outline the whole roof with the darker color. You can play with that. There's a little chimney, but we can continue to focus just on this darker green without you going too crazy here. Or this darker brown rather. We'll add darker green in just a minute. All right, so I have a little bit of that. So look at, where you might want to add this darker contrast. I think I'm good for right now. If anything, I pivot here to using a darker green for some of our trees. And I could easily, to make green again, it's yellow and blue mixed together. So I'll make a dark green. If anybody wants to pivot to adding some darker trees with me, you can. And you can use a little bit of this brown to make a darker tree color. So it's blue and yellow to make green. And then I want it to be a little darker. So I'm just going to grab a scoop of this. And then there is a little bit of, there's a hill right here. So I'm just going to use my darker green. I'm going to use just a little bit of this darker green paint. And I'm going to put in a hillside right here because I'm going to put like little trees and bushes on top of it. So I'm going to make some kind of faux foliage. They're kind of like, I don't want to say green little clouds because that's just not right, but some shrubs. See those shrubs I just added in? How convenient. And you can tuck in a few like darker, but maybe brown or even a darker green shrub, like in the front too, if you wanted to. Just to kind of add 2 tiers. Optional. But we're going to add some trees in the distance as well. So with your dark green of choice, I'm just going to add some like a tree line in the distance just by with some little dabs at the tip of my brush. Right here on top of the green hillside, below these dark mountains, I'm just adding some dark green trees, a little tip, using the tip of my brush, just little dabs, highs and lows to add a tree line in the distance. See that? So easy, but it really just kind of, and I'm doing some straight lines and I'm doing some trees, high and lows, and that just adds a little bit of a tree line back there. So we're going to do a little bit of this all over with this green. I'm going to do it on both sides behind the Hobbit house. We'll add some trees. This is where the picture really starts to come together a little bit. So there's some trees coming in on both sides. I'll bring it a little closer. There we go. So cool. You can also use like a little bit of this green. You want it to kind of create your hillside, just like coming down a little bit. A little bit of shading on the hillside with a little bit of water and a little bit of this green. You can create a little bit of shading, kind of like where the bottom of these hills meet the rocks. See how that little bit of shading right here at the bottom of the hillside? You could do a little bit of that if you wanted to. And it's just a little water, and I'm using my finger just to do a little smudging. So it's a little shading, kind of like down at the bottom of the hillside. And I'm using a little water on my brush. You could say I have that dark green. And I'm just doing a little, just a couple, it's a couple touches of this. And then I'm just using my finger to kind of smudge it in. And you can see it gives it a little bit of shading. Just a little bit. The smudging of your finger works great. If you don't like to get your fingers dirty, you can always use paper towel. No judgment. You can kind of put a little shading wherever you wish. So if you want to do a little bit on the top side of the hillside, you just do a horizontal brush stroke and then do a horizontal smudge just to break up the green if you wanted to. I might add some bushes in front of my cottage here, my little Hobbit house. Look at that. I'm going to add some of these dark green bushes. Maybe some tall grass. Maybe some flowers. Look at that in front of the Hobbit house here. Sorry, my picture's turned a little bit. There we go. Just did a little bit of greenery here. So I'm just using little dabs. You could do grass-like, you could do, just to make it look a little bit more natural. You could do some horizontal smudging here for some shade. Where you can experiment. as an artist. I'm going along the path a little bit. This is where we start to appreciate all the fun detail work that we've done. We just kind of make it ours. So this green can be smudged. It could be used just for your, some grass. It could be used for shrubs in front of your Hobbit house. If you want to put some pretty flowers kind of tucked in to these shrubs in front of the house, we can do that. One thing that we haven't added in this picture yet are like flowers. So we do have a few minutes. I'm happy to show you how to do that if you're interested in adding some flowers. One of the things you can do is you could take this green, and if you want like an overlapping effect, you could take this green and just create some bushes in the foreground. And this might be scary for some of you, but I'm going to do it just to show you how much fun it can be. So watch this. I'm going to overlap. I'm going to create some space, and maybe there's some grass blades here for some flowers in the foreground. I'll even do a few over here. See, it's overlapping the circle. That might be scary for some of you, but just consider it perhaps. But I'm going to do some shrubs. So I'm doing maybe some tall grass blades, and maybe I'll just do some low stuff here in the front, but it's going to kind of connect. And I'm just doing some like left, right, just texture, because I'm going to add some flowers in here on top. So you could do long, skinny grass blades if you wish. You could do, and I'm using this dark green that I've been using for everything else. And you can have the bottom be natural, but just fill this in. See that? Super fun. If you don't like this, you don't have to do it. I'm here just to keep you on your toes. And we're going to let this dry once we're done here, so we can put flowers in here. But I'm going to do orange flowers that are going to match the sky. Now we're going to finish our sky too. Now that our sun is nice and dry, we can do that. But get some of this, if you want to do any of this down here with me, feel free to add in some green-like texture down here on the bottom. I'm kind of changing the angle of my brush stroke to kind of create it to be a little grassy down here. I'm just really being in the moment. This is a dark green color. I'm going to probably need more. I might have enough, but we'll see. See how close I get here. So it's kind of a nice way to, you're kind of coming out of the scene a little bit, which is kind of fun. We will do one last round of like lighter highlighting for the picture. There's a lot of more white we can bring in. So I know this is a little bit longer of a class, but I wanted you to play with some of these details here. And if you need to pause this class and kind of come back to it, that's fine. We shouldn't be more than 15 more minutes or so. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit of like this green bottom, which is really quite fun. It's balanced to the eye, right? You can see how it's a little thicker in areas, but it's fairly flat on the bottom, right? Like if I put a ruler up against it. See that? Okay, so I think that's fine for right now. Let's see. And you can figure out where you might want just some like long, skinny grass blades kind of coming up and in. Maybe that will make it a little bit more like as a secondary grass texture. You could do some longer grass blades, just kind of tucked in on the left and the right. So it kind of soften things a little bit. All options to consider. I'm not going to add too many more, but for me, I wanted just to add a little bit. So I'm going to let the green dry, because then we're going to tuck some orange flowers in, which will be really fun. But on these little green grass blades that come up, you can tuck your flowers in on those grass blades, which is really fun. So you can see I'm just doing a few of those kind of coming up here in this space. Okay, So I'm done with this little grass area that I added in, the overflowing bit. I'm gonna go back to the sky, get a clean brush. I'm gonna do one ring of white around the sun carefully, and then I'm gonna add a few more clouds to the sky. Find a small brush of choice. Make sure it's clean, 100% clean, because I'm gonna use white for the white ring around the sun. This is going to require a steady hand. If this scares you, you don't have to do it. I'm going to do it because I want to. It may not come out perfect, but I'm interested in trying it. Okay. You're going to leave an orange gap. Very little paint on your brush. So I'm putting a ring around the sun, an orange gap in between. Steady hand. I'm using my pinky to stabilize my hand. Dragging my pinky. Trying to maintain the same width of the orange ring. If you need to come in and do touch-ups with orange, you can. Okay, not bad, not bad. Not perfect, but not bad. I might try to do 2 rings. It seems pretty risky, doesn't it? I'm gonna try to do another one. I might do a little water wash instead of pure white paint. So mixing a little water. Look at that, and it gives me a nice clean tip. I'm gonna do a second ring with a water wash. And that works beautifully. Glides much more smoothly. There's a little bit of a double ring. I could even come in on the inside and add a little bit of extra detail work. Use your eye here. This could be anything you want it to be. I'm just being playful as an artist. Okay, so there's that. I am going to come in with a little bit of a water wash. That would be great for some more clouds, especially on top of the sun. You can use some of this beigey orange for some clouds, this orange from your mountains for some of the cloud-like detail. Water on your brush will be helpful here, so you don't need a lot of paint. And I'm going to come right on top. Watch this. Super scary, but just doing some lines. Water will kind of make it nice and smooth for you here. So put a little water on your brush to help with the glide of adding some more long, skinny clouds. And you're going to overlap the sun, just like that. So you can pick and choose how many clouds you might want to add in here, where you want to overlap the sun and where you don't want to overlap the sun, how much or how little water you want to use. Doing some softer double lines. You're going to get a feel for when you're going to be done. So just kind of check yourself. Say, okay, I think I'm done doing the clouds in the sky. For me, I wanted just enough, but take as much time as you need. I want you to be happy with your sun. I want you to be happy with your sky. You can do refinement. It's just a beautiful focal area. So I'll give you 2 minutes to play with the sky. I'll keep an eye on the time, and then we're going to do some white highlighting detail for the rest of the picture. I'm going to add in a little smokestack really quick for my house, my little Hobbit house. I didn't add one. Just going to add one over here, little brown. Probably give it a second coat, a little smokestack. I'll outline that in brown or maybe black ink paint. I might make a little bit of an orangey color. Any final details that you want to like tweak with your house, feel free to do that. So feel free to play with your house right now. Make your house, I want you to be happy with your house, and I want you to be happy with your sky. We're going to switch to doing the orange flowers and the white highlighting on the water as some of our final steps after. I'm adding a little bit more orange detail around the doors for me because I'm just inspired to do that. Because I can. The orange will tie into the sky. The orange will also tie into the flowers that I'm going to be adding. So I'm just doing a little bit of orange detail work around the doors just to kind of make it a little more homey. So I added a little bit more there. And I might do a little bit of a dark outline around the doors and the windows too. Remember we talked about that. You could also do that with a pen after. But the tip of this brush is pretty decent, so I'm going to use the tip of this brush. It's working out for me at the moment. So anywhere you want to do any dark outline work around the house, around the windows, feel free to do that. You could also use an ink pen or even a fine tip Sharpie. That would work fine too. Just wait to the very end till you're done painting to do that. It's so satisfying. I absolutely love using an ink pen. And this would be a great painting to do that on. I've used Sharpies as well, very similar. And I might just outline the whole path with a little bit of this dark color. Just because, hey, why not? And there's a little bit of a sidewalk situation happening with slats. So if you wanted to add slats to your sidewalk, you could. Adding a little water to your brush to make it easier to glide for any of the outlining work, any of the sidewalk work, making a little bit of a water wash, spinning your brush in that, make it easier to glide for some of those details. There you go. All right. So there is a little bit of detailed work that I'll share with you with regards to the water detail. There's white water detail that we can go in and add. I'll give you a minute to finish what you're doing. I'm kind of adding a little bit of darker lines on the house itself. So like it's shaping the roundedness of the roof. Okay. But we'll slowly transition. I might outline, we'll slowly transition in just a minute to doing the white, but I'm going to outline my chimney. So my chimney, oh, it needs a minute to dry. I'll give that a minute. But chimney, you can outline in a darker color too, once you're ready. The chimney's a little wet. It's okay. I have a little chimney. So sometimes like the lighter highlighting and the darker outlining, they really can make an object kind of stand out. For the Hobbit door to stand out a little bit more, they have like a green outline. I might just do like a white line down the middle. I don't know. We'll see. With like a little doorknob. My picture's crooked, so there we go. So if you want like a true door, you can see what it looks like bringing in a little bit of lightness back right there. So I did a little bit of a white outline on the inside of the black with like a little doorknob. So totally optional, but that white matches the sun, right? So lots of things you can consider for your picture today. But I love the way that it's kind of coming all out. But we'll grab a little bit of white, add a little more white to the water. Optional, but I'll show you what that looks like. It's really to create like where the highlighting is coming off from the sun. So this is I want you to have a nice fine point on your brush, spin it, so you have some good control. We can start by the rocks so you can start to see. So on the underside of the rocks, we're doing all horizontal kind of brush strokes, but you can see by adding a little bit of lightness on the underside of these rocks. You want this white to be pretty bold and crisp. That's what's really going to make it stand out. So I'm doing soft, gentle brush strokes. I'm only painting with the tip of the brush. See this? So how we're creating that water reflection on the underside? Pretty cool, right? So on the underside of all these rocks, I'm just going to do they're really horizontal lines, little tiny brush strokes. You can do the same thing at the shoreline. So follow the shoreline, be curious, just do little tiny brush strokes that come in and out. Look at that. To give like the water is washing up on the shore. These are rocks, right? See that? You want to use your finger to smudge it a little bit? You can. You can put a little water on your brush. Doesn't have to be pure paint, so keep that in mind. A little bit, and then wherever you have these dark rocks, you can add just a tiny bit of white. Just start there, and then use your finger to smudge. And I'm staying horizontal, right? I'm being very intentional about that. Just a little bit of white. Again, anywhere you put those dark rocks. Is doing a 1-2 brush stroke and then kind of smudging my finger underneath it. We don't want to cover up the dark rocks or the dark shading. See on the distance? Okay. You can do, another thing is you can do some like swirling, like water kind of coming in, like water lines. Like you're creating a little bit of a tide pool here. You can add as much or as little of this water lines as you wish. It's kind of like when we do lakes and we add like a little bit of a lighter color on top. So I'm just adding a little bit of water, a lighter color water kind of coming in. I'm going to stay primarily on the right. So it's just got a little lighter right there. You could do a little bit of that in the background too. Don't cover all of the green, but this is just detail you can consider. But you can see how it really is bringing the scene to life here. Over here on the right side, I'm keeping this fairly dark. I'm only doing the lighter white over on the right. And I think that's going to be it. I'm really happy with it. Holding it up close just so you can see it. Don't hesitate to use your finger to smudge, blend it in. Okay. And we're going to make a light orange for these flowers. So if you want to do flowers with me, you can. If you don't want to do, these are going to be so easy. So yellow and a little bit of red. And I know we're at about 2 hours, almost 2 hours for the class. So thanks for being here. But I'm going to make an orange, kind of like this color of the sky, maybe a little lighter. Probably a little lighter. A little bit of the white pigment will help stand out on top of the green. So like a creamsicle color orange is perfect. And you could do any kind of flower shapes that you want down here. I'm just gonna do like really basic, like and you're just gonna come in and just pop in a few flowers. Now some of these can have different styles. You're gonna have to do 2 coats. So just pop in some big flowers and some little flowers. Start tucking them in. So I'm doing some big flowers and little flowers. You can do little clusters. You can do 3-petaled flowers. You could do abstract flowers. For me, I'm just doing single base coats first, just for placement. See, I'm just doing placement of high and low. And I'll bring this down a little bit so you can see it. And they're very light in color. The light in color is good because it's gonna stand out on top of the green, because we can always change the color of these. I'll make these flowers a little more rich in color. So you can do 6-petaled flowers. You could just do like a 1, 2, 3-petaled flower. They're all in the same family, right? Like we're not striving for perfection here. This is to add a little bit more of nature to our picture. You could even tuck in a couple of these small little dots into the front of your cottage. Like these little flowers are growing back there too with little dots. So cute, right? Love that. We can always put more color back in there. I'm just gonna get basic flower shapes, and you don't have to, this is fairly abstract. If you want to do really detailed flowers, it's just going to take you longer, which is fine. Those are your choices. But you can see I just did some really basic flowers here, flowered shapes. And then while that's drying, I'm going to come in and mix like a better orange. So, because I want these flowers to be the same color as the top. If not, oh, they can be a little different, but I want them to stand out. So I'm just mixing an orangey color again. I was using a lighter orange for these. But watch this with a little bit. And I'll put little black dots in the center of some of these so they all have centers. But I'm just doing a dark orange detail. And I'm kind of mixing the lighter orange. So these flowers are two-toned. So they have a little darker orange and they have a little lighter orange. And with a little black dot in the middle, these are going to look great. Just a little bit of spring kind of popping into the foreground. And a little tiny black dot placement will look fantastic as well. The other thing to consider is bringing in some darker green contrast to this area as well. I'll show you what it looks like, because right now this looks pretty flat green from like a layered perspective. If you see up here, we have like a medium green and a darker green. Right now this is kind of like that emerald. If we bring in a little bit of a darker green and highlight some of these leaves, it will bring more depth to the whole flower area down here. So you can see I just did a quick second touch of the darker orange. So now the flowers have 2 tones, which is great. It matches everything. But if I bring in a little bit of a darker green, it will bring it to the next step in that regard. So if I make a darker green, you can bring in a brown into it, make a darker green. Just have it be darker than this. Again, green is yellow and blue. You could just you could do a blue green too, like a more bluey green. I have a little bit of brown left, so that will help me give it a darker contrast. But you want to use a really small brush here. This is what will help. And then you can kind of outline some of these leaves. So using a smaller brush, you're just tucking in a little bit of depth in between some leaves, and you're not dotting, but you're just kind of trying to find alternative shapes using your darker green. And if you see a grass blade, paint a side of a grass blade just like a darker color. So just outline a grass blade or two with a darker color. And this is just adding, look at the difference already. Just a little touch of a darker leaf here and there. Maybe outlining a grass blade. Look at the difference on this side compared to this side. Just with a little bit of the darker detail. Okay, so it's a little thing sometimes that can really change your painting, add depth, but it's just about holding the time to do it. So I'm just going from the left to the right, just tucking in a little dot for a leaf. If there is an existing petal, you can outline the petal with dark. That's all you need to do. So you have a little bit of the dark and you have a little bit of the light. And then I will use a dark brown or a black for the center of these flowers. And that will allow our flowers to come to life. I'm not going to use the green. It's not going to be dark enough. So you can do as much or as little as that as you wish. But for me, that was tremendously helpful. Just going to make some of these grass blades a little longer so they look a little bit more whimsical. See how I'm just extending some of these over here? So this is where you can do any finishing touches to kind of do what you need for your eye. I made it a little wispy over here on the edges. For me, that just is an idea that I had. These are long lines. So for me, that bottom looks nice. Put a little water on your brush. Okay. You're going to get to a point where you stop playing with it, right? Okay. The final thing is finding a black or using a dark, dark, dark brown for the center of these flowers. And then that will really tie it all together. And then we can wrap things up. But I hope that you enjoyed the class today. I know it was a little long. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to find a small brush and I'm going to add a tiny black dot on the inside of these flowers. Be sure to, if you don't have the Patreon app already downloaded to your phone, I'm just doing little black dots on the inside of these flowers. We have a chat room going where folks are sharing their artwork with one another, which is really fun, especially after these classes or people that watch the recordings and the tutorials. They will sometimes post their artwork there. It's always fun to see how your own version of our pictures came out. So be sure to, if you haven't downloaded the Patreon app yet, do it. It doesn't cost any money. It's just a free app on your phone, and you'll get like notifications when I post updates or recordings, which is really helpful too. But that's just a little bit of black on the flowers, which really kind of tie it all together. If you wanted to spend more time on these flowers, you certainly could. You could come in here with a little bit of black and add like shading, even more shading into, I'm not going to go too crazy, but you could touch a little bit of black here and there if you wanted to add any like core shading. I'm not going to do too much, but you can see what that looks like. If you don't like that, you don't have to do it. But I want to thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's class. I thought it was a lot of fun, a ton of detail, but I thought it was worth it. You know, we don't always do this amount of detail. And it's one of those things where sometimes it's fun to do, to kind of take our time and do the layering and then do the detail work in each of the elements, because there's a lot of elements to this picture. But I hope you loved it. I look forward to seeing your artwork. And if you wanted to do any outlining work using an ink pen, feel free to do that. But I'll zoom this up so you can get a final picture of what it looks like. Awesome. But thank you again for being here. And if I do any outlining work with ink, which I probably will do, even on the flowers down here, and I may outline some of these mountains, I'll be sure to post that to the Patreon app. But thanks again for being here and have a great day today. Take care.